So we really need to keep challenging our individual expectations of ourselves and our perfectionism and give ourselves permission to take up space, find supportive networks and redefine what success means to us in order to begin to unlock and express that potential that's been waiting to be unleashed.
Hey there, this is Women on the Brink. I'm your host, Chris Jeffrey, a registered acupuncturist and wellness advisor with a passion for helping women live happier and more balanced lives. When I'm away from work, I'm usually outside in nature, either walking the seawall or I'm hiking in the mountains. And like many of you, my life has been filled with moments of hardship, some that I thought I couldn't overcome and really left me questioning my own strength. But through these challenges, I discovered resilience, courage, and a renewed sense of purpose. So I'm here to share not just my journey, but the lessons I've learned, and to remind you that no matter what obstacles come your way, there's always a path forward. And just to let you know, this podcast is not prescriptive. It's an offering. So please take what resonates with you and leave the rest.
So, have you ever felt like there's something inside you, like an idea or a talent, a calling, that's just waiting to be unleashed? Maybe you felt a restlessness or frustration or even drained. And it's not because you're doing too much, but because you're holding something back. The truth is, unused potential doesn't just fade away. It usually builds and it presses, and eventually it just demands to be expressed. This is all part of the liver qi stagnation that traditional Chinese medicine philosophy talks about. But this piece is often a little underestimated because it isn't as obvious as some of the other frustrations we experience. And what I see in my clinic, and I guess in the world around me, is that more women are beginning to acknowledge this fire within. And it might manifest initially as like depression or anger or even as some strange health issue. But the root can be a woman's potential has been dormant for far too long. So today we're diving into the power of that untapped energy. Why does unexpressed potential create so much stress in us? And how can we turn that tension into momentum? And most importantly, how can we start channeling our hidden strengths into something real, something that lights us up? If you've ever felt like there's more inside of you waiting to come out, then this episode is for you. Let's turn that pressure into power and step into the potential that's been waiting for you all along. Now, we've already talked in a previous episode quite a bit about the liver meridian in traditional Chinese medicine as being responsible for repressed emotions that cause resentment and frustration and irritability when it's out of balance. Untapped potential can also cause depression and anger in women because it creates a painful gap between our abilities and our reality, which leads to self-doubt and often apathy where we feel kind of stuck. When I think about the societal expectations or the personal responsibilities or my own limited beliefs about myself, these things have prevented me from pursuing my aspirations because I felt powerless or trapped. And I've mentioned before that as a mother with 3 young children who all needed my constant care and attention, I was totally overwhelmed. I mean, no book ever prepared me for how much of myself that I had to give and give up in order to be a good mom. And now I know why they say it takes a village to raise a child. Fortunately, my husband could see that my cup was not being filled, and he actually agreed to help me out so I could go to school part-time, to talk to adults and cultivate my curiosity around natural medicine and give me that much needed break from parenting. And don't get me wrong, those girls were and still my everything. But it was only a small part of Christine, and my parenting was actually taking up a lot of Christine. And deep down, I knew I wasn't meeting my full potential because of my obligations to motherhood. I knew I wanted and was capable of more. So is this resonating? Is this relatable to any of you? I mean, are we too afraid as women to acknowledge this because society often tells us that we're supposed to be really enjoying motherhood a lot? I mean, society always encourages us to prioritize caregiving and emotional labor, which is taking care of everyone else's emotional well being or supporting others over our own ambitions, right? And if we do want to, have it all in quotations, career, family, personal fulfillment, it can really create a lot of inner conflict, and that leads to that potential of ours being put on hold. And I think that this is where so many of us women struggle with untapped potential, not because we lack ability, but because of our internal barriers that create roadblocks to fully stepping into that power. And, does our struggle with perfectionism and self doubt and underestimating our abilities cause us to hesitate to take risks? And does the lack of female representation in many leadership and creative roles make it difficult to even envision ourselves in those roles? So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to venture to say that the emotional and mental load many women carry in relationships and families and workplaces leaves little room for personal growth. And if we have cultural or generational expectations on top of this, it makes it even harder to break free and express our full potential. So we really need to keep challenging our individual expectations of ourselves and our perfectionism and give ourselves permission to take up space, find supportive networks and redefine what success means to us in order to begin to unlock and express that potential that's been waiting to be unleashed. I was working out next to this young woman at the gym the other day, and she had her earbuds on listening to music, and she started to sing at certain parts in the song she was listening to. And then she was kind of grunting and breathing heavily. And first I was like, oh my God, she is so annoying. And then I thought to myself, you know what? She's actually just wanting to take up a little bit of space. And women have been reprimanded for doing that for so long. So I just kind of smiled and then I let it go. And I was just happy for her to be expressing herself, no matter what that looked like. And how many of you have experienced imposter syndrome when you're comparing yourselves to others or you feel you haven't earned your place? Yeah, I mean, I think about Mel Robbins all the time while I'm doing this podcast. But it can't hold us back from pursuing bigger opportunities or owning our small achievements because we feel we're not enough. And the truth, though, and this is big, is that imposter syndrome is not an indicator of inadequacy. It's actually a sign of growth. So let's toast anyone who is in imposter shoes because it means you're living in the discomfort that comes with pushing yourself, beyond your comfort zone. So I'm going to ask you some questions right now. So feel free to grab a pen if you want to write some of them down. So the first one is, have you ever felt like you're holding yourself back from reaching your full potential? And then ask yourself, who's standing in your way? Like, are there external pressures that make it hard to take the next step? And also, here's another one. Do you find yourself hesitating or worried about what others might think if you don't succeed? Or if you do succeed, maybe more importantly. Or maybe you feel like you need to have more education, like me, more experience, more something before you can go after what you truly want. Yeah, I mean, this one really speaks to me. So let's just think about those barriers for a moment. What's the one thing that might change if you started pushing past them? Maybe it's discomfort or fear, or maybe you'll cause fear and discomfort in someone else if you break the status quo. And guess what? You might even fail or suck at it. But who cares? If you accept that learning is just part of the process, you free yourself from the fear of making mistakes and open the door to growth, creativity, and resilience. Now, please stay with us because after the break, I'm going to show you some really great techniques to help you step out of the fear that's preventing you from being that artist or teaching that course or writing the next novel, starting a nonprofit organization, and anything else that your imagination wants to bring out in you.
Join us on our website for articles from our podcasts at www.womenonthebrink.net. There you'll find extra tools that can be used to raise self-awareness and build resilience. We want to make this experience as interactive as possible for you Brinkers. So join the forums, introduce yourself, and share your stories.
So I think we understand how this unexpressed potential creates stress in us women because it represents a misalignment between what we know we're capable of and what we're actually doing. We know that this inner conflict leads to frustration and anxiety and even burnout. And again, it's not from doing too much, but from holding back, from inaction. When we suppress our creativity, our ambitions, our talents, the energy that should be fueling growth instead builds up as tension. And our brains experience this as cognitive dissonance, creating an underlying sense of restlessness or dissatisfaction. And then over time, this can manifest as self doubt and regret, or even physical symptoms like fatigue and stress, and even autoimmune problems and other unexplained health symptoms. The longer we ignore our potential, the heavier it feels, making it even harder to break free from the cycle. But the good news is that this tension can be transformed into momentum. That frustration is actually energy waiting to be redirected. And the key is to take action, starting small, but starting now. So instead of viewing stress or even anger as a burden, it can actually be seen as fuel to push towards the next step. So whether it's writing down an idea, reaching out to a mentor, or dedicating time to a passion project, each small step builds confidence and clarity. I have to say that, for me, this podcast is the result of that very thing. Untapped potential with a splash of anger to fuel it. And I want to remind you that, you know what? You have the wisdom to be your full self. Each and every one of us does. Some people might say, I don't know what I'd like to do with my life or my career or my retirement. And you know what I say? I say bullshit. You may not know it on a really conscious level, but your subconscious knows it. And for a lot of us, we've been stuck because of some old story we've told ourselves about ourselves for a very long time. So I'm going to put some more questions out to you for you to think about. So the first thing is, what are you good at? And we're all good at something, whether it's cooking or teaching or doing puzzles, drawing or reading a room before anyone speaks. Yeah, that's a real gift, sister. And then another question is, what did you enjoy doing as a child? As kids, we instinctively gravitate toward what excites us. So whether that's storytelling, building things, problem solving, or creative expression. Like if you loved drawing, maybe there's untapped creativity waiting to be explored. If you spend hours organizing and planning pretend adventures, or maybe leadership and strategy strengths need a new outlet. By revisiting these early interests, you can reignite your forgotten skills and fuel your personal or professional growth and create a sense of fulfillment that's been missing. Sometimes the key to unlocking your potential isn't about finding something new, it's about remembering what has been there all along. And here's another question. What brings you joy? So joy isn't just a fleeting emotion. It's actually a catalyst for unlocking potential because it creates flow. It fuels persistence and it removes the mental barriers that come with stress and obligation. So when you pursue what lights you up, you show up differently. You're more confident, you're more engaged and more willing to take risks. And joy also increases resilience. And here's why. When you enjoy the process, setbacks feel like part of the journey rather than reasons to quit. So whether it's creative expression, problem solving, community building, or deep thinking, what brings you joy is often what you're meant to be doing. So by prioritizing joy, you're not just indulging in something fun, you're actually stepping into the fullest, most powerful version of yourself. And then ask yourself, who do you admire? Like, who you admire reveals what you value and what qualities resonate with you. And most importantly, the kind of person you aspire to become. So when you're drawn to someone's energy or confidence, or their creativity, resilience, or leadership, it's often because those same traits exist within you and are just waiting to be developed. So by studying the people you admire, you gain a blueprint for your own growth. And their journeys can inspire action, helping you to see, what's possible and giving you the motivation to push you past your own limits. I have an aunt in Manitoba that I really admire and look up to. She's been working with Indigenous women for a good portion of her life, and she's 90 years old, and she's still working on building her knowledge center and advocating for Indigenous women's rights. And for me, it's incredible to see how her dream of helping women has become a reality. And honestly, she has no intention of slowing it down because of her passion and her commitment to her projects. So, whether it's a public figure, a mentor, or someone in your everyday life, paying attention to what draws you to them can unlock hidden potential in yourself. The key isn't just the admiration, it's using that inspiration to take action in your own life. And then ask yourself, here's an interesting one. What are you afraid of? So, when a woman confronts what she's afraid of, she's actually reclaiming control over her narrative. Because you know what? When we're pushing through our fear, we're building that resilience and confidence and creating a deeper understanding of our own strengths. And every time a woman speaks up despite the fear of being wrong, she's taking a risk, despite the fear of failure, or steps into the unknown despite self-doubt. And she thereby expands her potential. So fear isn't a stop sign, believe me, it's a compass pointing toward the boldest, most capable version of yourself. I have a daughter who wanted to start her own business, but it just brought up some fear in her. And she gradually pushed through that fear by taking some small steps. She was networking with other entrepreneurs, learning some business skills, and she started to really gain some momentum. And I noted that with each action, her confidence was growing. And some of the things that once might have terrified her started to become second nature to her, like her public speaking skills. And over time, the very things she feared, like having to do presentations and put herself out there, became a real source of strength for her. She learned to see the setbacks as lessons and the pivots as opportunities and the self-doubt as a normal part of her growth. And by confronting her fear, she not only unlocked her potential as a business owner, but also strengthened her resilience, proving to herself that she is more capable than she ever imagined. So in my case, does that mean that I should be signing up for a TED Talk to overcome my fear of public speaking? Yeah, not yet. And here's the one that changed my life 2 years ago, and you can do this right now if you want. Stop what you're doing and imagine yourself in 10 years from now in 2035. So what I did was I asked myself, what would I be doing with my life in 10 years from now? Like, who are the people in my life? Do I like who I've become? And then now, as that 10-year older version of yourself in 2035, reflect back on the last 10 years of your life. What are you happy about in those 10 years, and what would you change? And this was such a big aha moment for me, where I finally had to admit that my plan was just a Pinterest board full of dream projects I hadn't started yet. But hey, it's all part of the process, right? Time to get off the couch, dust off those plans, and maybe even open a few of those tabs I'd been too scared to look at. And I can say in all honesty that 2 years in from that cathartic moment, I'm making progress to becoming that woman I aspire to be. Yes, I've had a lot of challenges and some setbacks and some pivots, but I'll look back on my life without regret and hopefully with more pride and a good laugh at how many times I tried to plan everything only to realize that life had much better ideas.
Why, God, why?
We all know that one, right? but I'll be glad that I embraced the chaos and learned from the curveballs and kept finding joy in the process, no matter how many times I had to pivot in ridiculous situations and directions. And I just want to point out that it's also intentional why I've left money out of this conversation. Because while it's true that financial stability offers, certain amount of freedom, it's only one piece of the puzzle when it comes to a truly fulfilled life. I mean, if you imagine having all the money you need, you own your dream home, you've traveled everywhere you wanted to go, and you've got all the toys and material things you could ask for, even then, you'd still need something meaningful to do. And this is where fulfillment and purpose come into play. It's in these moments that we create our legacies and leaving behind something that goes beyond possessions. Now, here's the really, really important piece. Success doesn't have to mean a complete transformation overnight. It can be as simple as making progress, learning something new, or just allowing yourself to explore what excites you. Your potential isn't meant to be buried, it's meant to be expressed. So, what's one small action you can take today to release this potential? According to Dr. Suki, a global speaker and author who's really passionate about maximizing human potential, he suggests that all each of us have to do is take that one action in alignment with who you're already becoming on the inside. And he calls this the 1% transformation. And this is a process of getting out of your own way, of not letting the patterns of your past dictate what you do, and removing that old perceptual lens that tells you, I can't, it's too hard, or I'm too tired. And once you've gotten out of your own way, you start focusing on marginal gains, even as little as 1%. So if you can have marginal gains every single day, it starts to become like compound interest. And what's going to start to happen is that those small, consistent improvements are going to lead to, massive results. So to summarize, the key steps to tapping into your potential include starting to do something even before you're ready, just by taking small but consistent actions and reframing perfectionism as progress. So support yourself with supportive networks, mentors, and role models to help reinforce confidence and direction. And more importantly, redefine success on your own terms, not by external expectations, but by personal fulfillment and what feels good. Because this allows us women to grow in ways that feels both meaningful and sustainable. So by taking ownership of our skills and our voices and our ambitions, we Brinkers can break through the barriers and fully express the potential that's been waiting to emerge. So good luck, and share your successes with me by posting them on the website or shoot me an email. And until the next time, stay curious about what brings out the spark or the flame in you.
Thanks for joining. And I want you to know that this isn't just a podcast. This is a movement. So share this information with your friends and let's go, ladies.